The big heat is on, and the only way to beat the heat is to eat the heat. Well, the heat eater is coming, and it may be coming for you. So stick around and find out. Welcome in, folks, to a special Friday feel-good edition of Cold Rain's Weather World. And yeah, I used a phrase from 1992 Sports Center. What of it? And I've got my 1992 Blockbuster shirt on. It's throwback day, apparently, here at Cold Rain's Weather World. And we've got a big show, there I go again, a big show lined up for you today. You've got tropical activity. Finally have something that is potentially of interest out in the tropical Atlantic we're going to take a look at. Still got that lemon in the Gulf of Cold Rain. It's kind of a overripe lemon, almost rotten by now, but we're going to take a look at that too. Severe weather's back on the menu again this afternoon. Of course, through the weekend, we're going to take a look at just who's going to see what and when. Of course, we'll have your weekend forecast too, so you know how to plan this weekend. And we're going to take a look at that potentially record-breaking heat wave and see when it might break itself, and it's looking more and more likely that's going to happen in the not too distant future. So we've got a lot to get into. We'll wrap it up with space weather, and of course I'll have your weather IQ question and see just how smart you are about your weather knowledge. But first, folks, that's it. We're going to get right into it. We're going to start with the tropical update. Well, we finally got a little bit of potentially legitimate tropical action out here in the Atlantic. We're going to take a look at that and see what's going on out there. Before we do, though, I want to sincerely thank you for joining me today. We've had a lot of new subscribers over the past week or so, and certainly appreciate all the support here. I always ask you all to put in the comment section a couple of things, where you're commenting from, and of course, if there are any prayer requests that you have specifically, I can pray over for you. I've got one for you today. My grandmother is sick. At this age, I'm blessed to have a grandmother. I feel very blessed about that, but I've got one left and she's not doing well. And if you wouldn't mind keeping her in your prayers, I would really, really appreciate that. If you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, please subscribe and hit the like button, turn on notifications by clicking the bell, but leave me a comment. Let me know where you're coming from, what's going on in your neck of the woods. I'll read all of those and respond where I can, folks. But let's get on in here and take a look at the tropics. Got a lot of things to look at here on this. This is the hemispheric satellite image, and you can see quite a little bit of stuff here that's of interest going on. Got a tropical wave out here approaching the Antilles. Got some more tropical activity back out here in the Atlantic. Another one merging off of Africa that you can't see. A lot of dry air up here. You see all this dry air. This is the vapor loop, actually, not the satellite loop. It's satellite image, but it's a vapor loop. Little low pressure up here spinning around, and a cold front extending from a system up here. Look at this front all the way back in through the northern portion of the continental United States, with the monsoonal flow kicking into high gear. Look at this moisture coming all into the southwestern portion of the country. And there's that little lemon, that little piece of energy over the Gulf of Cold Rain. Got an anticyclone sitting here over the southeast, providing nothing but hot and humid conditions for the eastern section of the country. And that's what's going on with the satellite and vapor loop here, folks. So we're going to get in here and take a look and see what the Hurricane Center is showing. Well, they're still showing this 10% chance of this little lemon out here in the Gulf of developing. But man, this thing is approaching land rapidly. It's not going to have time to do it, and this thing's going to be dropped by tomorrow when I show you this image. Probably won't be anything on here at all. But that's all that the National Hurricane Center is seeing developing the next 7 days. But maybe just beyond that period, or even toward the tail end of it, we could see something going on out here in the central Atlantic. And as a matter of fact, here's a more traditional satellite image. This is the infrared loop, and these brighter colors are just convection, areas of thunderstorms, and the clouds extend way up into the atmosphere. It gets cooler up there, and the satellite algorithm says, hey, for colder cloud tops, we're going to make it reds and purples and whites and things like that. Look at these whites down here, way over here in Mexico. You can see the cloud tops really going up into the atmosphere there. But there are a couple of waves out here in the Atlantic, nothing to be concerned about or scared about right now. Got kind of a frontal boundary out here too, and there's that little wave into the Gulf, and you can see all the convection up here in the United States. This is something that we look at from time to time, and it is a shear anomaly map. My friend Gerald Mingle on his channel showed this map yesterday, and it's a good map to show because it tells you what we expect the shear to be like in the Atlantic. Remember, when you're looking at the tropical situation, Tropical cyclones do not like wind shear, a lot of wind blowing the convection off. They don't like cold waters, and they don't like dry air. And when you got all of those combinations present, or at least some of those variables present, then you don't tend to see tropical development. Well, we're here. Here's the coast of Africa. This is the main development region down here. I'll draw it for you so you can kind of see it. So this is what we're looking at right in this area here. Maybe slightly a little bit to the north of that, but that's what we're watching as we go on out in time with this. Reds are bad for tropical development. Blues mean that shear is decreasing over time. And look at this, as we get on out into Saturday and Sunday, look what happens. We have a favorable Atlantic developing coming off the coast of Africa, and we have a tropical wave moving off the coast of Africa. So what could happen? Well, it's moistening up out here. It was dry, and it still is to the north of this, but you get on out here in time and you start to see some wind shear decrease, and then eventually it picks back up. So if we get a wave out ahead of this, we could see some development before wind shear tends to pick back up again. This is something else that is important to note when we look at tropical cyclone development. It is dry air. And what do we have here in abundance? We have dry air. We've got a big high pressure ridge centered just to the northeast of Africa, and the circulation around this is blowing. Basically, it's coming like this in a clockwise fashion. It's blowing all of this dry air out into our development region. And over time, as we see, this brown is the dry air, the greens and the yellows where it moistens up a little bit. You get dry air out into the Atlantic next week, but look at this. We start to see a plume of moisture coming off of Africa, kind of in our main development region there, and we start to see some of that dry air break up and allow a little low pressure to develop. This is a European model. The ensembles kind of smooth this out and keep it a little more moist down there, but this high pressure ridge starts to move off, especially as we get way on out in time. It'll sink back down and then move off to the north, and eventually maybe we'll get into a favorable position where this thing's not producing lots and lots of dry air. But that's what's one of the things that's been keeping tropical development at bay. A lot of this dry air down here, the high pressure zone is just in a wrong place for it. And that's good. You know, it keeps us from having to worry about too much tropical activity. But if you're looking for tropical development, you want to see that abate. And there are some signs that that's going to be abating too over the next week or couple of weeks, really. This is what's going on in the United States. We've got a big anticyclone sitting here over the southeastern portion of the country. That is clockwise flow around that. And while that flow is here, while that anticyclone is sitting in the southeastern portion of the country, south central portion of the country, now moving us out here to Sunday, you get flow around these things in a clockwise fashion. And what happens is you'll have little storm systems come around this, hang off the coast of the Atlantic, maybe even migrate back into the Gulf as long as this high pressure center is in this area. And when you have that kind of condition, you could see tropical development take place off the southeast coast or in the Gulf. We saw that with Chantal, and we could see that again later on. This past little system that's a lemon right now that's moving into Texas could have developed. It didn't. The conditions were not favorable for it in terms of shear, and it just couldn't get its act together. But eventually, over time, this ridge will migrate to the west and kind of put an end to that threat. We'll look at that more in the long range. Here is the satellite image from the Gulf of Coleraine. You can actually see a little bit of spin here now, but this is moving off into Louisiana and Texas, been bringing some heavy rain up here. Convection's kind of ragged, so nothing rapidly happening here. And if it doesn't happen rapidly, gonna run out of time. This thing's hauling right in toward land, and it will die a quick death once that happens, folks. Here is what we're looking at over the next few days around the Gulf. Here's the European model bringing it on into Texas and up into Louisiana, dissipating it, killing it right off. Is any other activity going to happen? Are we looking at any other chances of development here over the next, I don't know, week or so? Not seeing a lot of activity coming off. The GFS has a couple of little waves coming off here and doing some stuff, but eventually a trough's going to set up here and rid any sort of chance of anything developing in this region for a while. So that's what's going on there. And finally, here is the European ensemble. Okay, so this is telling us what it thinks the percentage chance of a tropical cyclone developing out in the Atlantic or in the Gulf or anywhere else for that matter is over time. We run this out. This is current, so I'm going to run this out days 03, 4. Now we're into day 5, 6. Look here, off the coast of Africa, just west of the Cape Verde Islands, we start to see some legitimate percentage chance of tropical development out here. Now, this is not telling you if it's going to be a hurricane or a tropical storm. It's just telling you that there's a chance of one of these waves coming off of Africa developing, and it's starting to see a fairly decent chance, 60–70% chance. We're seeing better wind shear. We've got moistening up of the atmosphere out there. We've got a robust tropical wave. No reason for it really not to develop as it comes along, as it looks right now. Anyway, it gets into warmer waters as it gets on east, and then we start to smooth everything out in time. If we look at Let's look at tropical storm probabilities. Those are a little bit less. What you were just looking at is tropical depression possibilities. Tropical storm, we're looking at maybe a 20% chance. So either way, we have now a legitimate chance. This up here is just an old storm that's moving to the north and to the east. It's not going to probably develop, and it's not going to affect anybody if it does. But now we have a legitimate chance out here in the Atlantic. So we're going to be watching this closely over the next couple of days to see how this happens. I told you yesterday the Madden-Julian oscillation, which is an area of convection down in the kind of Indian Ocean area, it is moving into a favorable phase at a favorable rate. So over the next 2 or 3 weeks, we could really start to see some conditions out here become much more favorable for development. We're going to watch it. European ensemble is a little bit enthusiastic about some development, so we're going to be enthusiastic about watching this and seeing what's going to go on. In the meantime, folks, I've got your Weather IQ question coming straight ahead. Then we're going to take a look at the severe weather threat that's out there for today and tomorrow. One of the promises that I always make on this show is to do my very best to bring you the best analysis that I can give you around the most interesting weather topics that are most likely to impact you where you are and others around the United States. And I try to fulfill that every day. And the other promise is to leave you smarter than when you came. You may not always like the forecast, but you're going to learn something new. That's the goal here at Cold Rain's Weather World. And one of the mechanisms that we use for that is the daily Weather IQ question. This is our last question in our short fall series set. And the question is, which of the following is a common weather hazard during the fall across many parts of the United States? Is it blizzards, dust storms, heat waves, or fog? The answer may surprise you, or it might not. If you know it, type it in the comment section. If you don't know it, simply wait till the end of the show and I will reveal it to you. But right now I have to reveal the severe weather outlook. Well, it's been kind of a broken record of a summer severe weather season so far, with the same areas getting hit over and over again over the past several weeks, and that looks to continue again over the upcoming several days at least. But starting off this late this morning, this is about 9:45 in the morning, showers and some rumbles of thunder stretching from central Kansas up through St. Joseph's here in northern Missouri, over to Springfield, up toward Gary, Indiana, South Bend, Toledo, and then over toward Buffalo, and then up into Burlington, Vermont, near Caribou, seeing a little bit of heavier rain up there in Maine. So we're seeing a lot of showers already along this boundary. That boundary is going to slip south over the course of the daytime hours and provide a focus for a little bit of organization, a little bit of shear aloft, not a lot of convergence along that boundary, but enough to create some clusters of showers and thunderstorms later here in lower New England, upper mid-Atlantic. Could see some wind damage from those anywhere from eastern Maine all the way back down to eastern Kansas. We could see along that boundary isolated severe thunderstorms, just general showers and thunderstorms where it's green. And then back up here in North Dakota, looking like a cluster will develop later on in the daytime, maybe an MCS at some point, move through with a swath of wind damage. Could see some supercells, though, to start out the activity, as is typical this time of year with high instability, a little bit of shear, and some of those supercells could drop a tornado or two, particularly where there's a little bit of boundary action and we're seeing some spin in the atmosphere. And then, of course, wind is the primary threat here in North Dakota and across New England as well. Hail is a bit more of a threat out west, where it's a little bit cooler with height. You get better lapse rates and more vigorous updrafts to take advantage of that with stronger instability. Tomorrow, just a marginal risk, but still a risk here in North and South Dakota, down the northern front range of the Rockies anyway, back into Montana, and then here across the Great Lakes as we see some spin associated with a mesoscale convective vortex. These things pop out of thunderstorm complexes, little areas of vorticity rotation in the atmosphere, and they fire off thunderstorms as they move along and experience the heating of the day. Lots of general thunderstorm activity here in the east and up and down the Rockies and back in toward Nevada and here in the Intermountain West too. Tornadoes, not much of a possibility tomorrow. Wind and hail are the primary threats, wind being the biggest threat of all in all of that. Here is the current surface map. There's that boundary we've been talking about, little low pressure systems, waves riding along that. Flooding threat again folks, it's just been raining and raining and raining with these thunderstorms because there's so much moisture content in the atmosphere. And when you have all that moisture content in the atmosphere, not only is it humid and muggy and nasty, but when it rains hard. Cats and dogs, deluge, frog strangler, whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of that going on. There's your severe weather threat here, and there it is here along a boundary up there in the north. Little wind energy in the atmosphere over top of this ridge. The ridge is centered here. There's another little sub-center here, but mostly it's centered here over the Carolinas. That's going to be migrating west with time, but over top of this ridge, you see the wind energy kind of rotating along. I'm going to back this up a little bit. Today, you see little pockets of wind. These little pockets of wind move through, act on the instability, and can enhance shower and thunderstorm organization. And you see where that wind energy is mainly north of the Canadian border. That's where all the big shear is. But over time, you see pieces of it in the green here move through the mid-levels and help to organize showers and thunderstorms. That flow continues to stay there, but eventually it starts to poke into New England out with time as well. So that's kind of where our flow pattern is. You get these little dips in the jet stream over the next few days. You're going to have to watch the northern tier. Way up here is where I'm expecting rounds of severe weather over the next several days, maybe a round or two here in New England as systems move through there with enhanced shear as well. Looking at the forecast radar as we go through the morning hours, there's that frontal boundary. Things are kind of dying out as we go through the morning hours. Could see some rain along the coast here in Texas and Louisiana. But look what happens as we get on into midday and just beyond 1, 2 o'clock, start to see showers. Thunderstorms break out all over the south in this unstable moist air mass. There's that line that sort of moves through eastern Massachusetts into Rhode Island and all the way up and down here in Connecticut and back into potentially parts of New York City, getting into there too. So we're going to see little organization there providing the wind threat, a lot of scattered showers and thunderstorms everywhere else. We get on into the late afternoon. Some of that will start to wane and abate, but you can see these little clusters moving into North Dakota. Any storms that fire up, the model's not all that enthusiastic of a big line segment or anything, but still plenty of opportunity for some of these supercells to drop some hail. So that's why we've got a slight risk there. Little MCS, little convective complex, hangs out overnight, propagates into the Great Lakes in the morning. There comes another one moving through Minnesota as we get into the morning hours tomorrow. And then in the afternoon hours, just more popcorn showers and thunderstorms across everywhere except for down here in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia. Probably going to see a minimum under the core of that ridge. Warm levels in the mid-levels kind of caps thunderstorm development, but around that ridge, plenty of opportunity for showers and thunderstorms. We get on into the afternoon and evening hours tomorrow. Early and late evening, we see another little system propagate through North Dakota, bringing a wind threat up there. So isolated tomorrow, and then plenty of rain working through New England again as we get to Sunday morning. Sunday morning is going to be rough. If you're heading out to church, look for some rain up there, probably some rain around a few showers here in North Dakota and Minnesota. And as we get on into Sunday afternoon, more showers and thunderstorms kind of moving off. Could be a washout here in New England for Sunday. We've been looking at that over the last couple of days. Great Lakes and Ohio Valley going to have to dodge some showers and thunderstorms too, and up here in the plains as well. So that's what's going on severe weather-wise. Going to look at that heat wave next because it's brutal, folks, record-setting, but it's coming to an end too. Now, as we take a look at that weekend forecast, unfortunately, it's going to feature some big heat and some bad air quality, says the sheep. We've got smoke again to deal with up here. I told you yesterday this was coming. Most of Minnesota down here into Wisconsin, upper Michigan, dealing with smoke from those wildfires in Canada. Bad air quality around Denver and parts of southwestern Colorado. Wildfire action down here, and New York around Philly as well. So we're looking at some bad air quality in those areas. Everybody else looking pretty good. Just note that if you have sensitivity to it, there you can see it showing up here in the gray areas where the smoke is. But heat advisories up along the East Coast, back along the Mississippi River, stretching into the southern plains around the Ozarks, places like that. Going to be hot and humid, and heat index values stretching into the 100s, and even got a little extreme heat warning action going on here. Flood watches up where we looked at earlier. Those showers and thunderstorms going to be heavy rainfall producers, and a tropical air mass and fog hanging out here in Nebraska, and some red flag warnings out in the Intermountain West. Don't burn anything out there for sure. Windy conditions, 20s to 30s in terms of wind gusts all across the northern plains and back into the Intermountain West, Four Corners region. And not too bad in most of the east portion of the country until you get up here in the northeast. Could see a few gusts up here this afternoon as well. But boy, oh boy, oh boy, here are the heat Here's our heat concern as we go through the next couple of days. Moderate, at least, where you see this orange. Red gets into major, and it doesn't tell you the temperature, but just know these are the areas that you need to watch out for if you're going to be outside for any length of time. And again, heat is cumulative. If you've got to work outside, be outside, play outside, do it in segments. Come in, take a break, cool off, stay hydrated. You got to do that, particularly if you're working out for multiple days like some of you do. There it is as we go on into Saturday, really starting to pick up here in the southeast, starting to get some purples in and reds way back up in here into the Midwest, expanding west in the Central Plains as that ridge starts to really build out. But look at this tropical air down here, extreme heat index values coming up, looking to probably get into 110 to 115 in spots as we go on out into Monday. And we'll keep it on rolling Tuesday. And then Wednesday, look what happens as we get on out here into Wednesday. We start to get these yellow colors coming down. I wonder what that means. Well, we're going to see what that means here. Look at that. Even little to none up here by the end of the period here, which is next Thursday. We are going to check that out, folks, as we get back in here and take a look at actual high temperatures over the next couple of days. I'll just show you those so you know what to look for the weekend. Mid to upper 90s today up and down the East Coast, hundreds in the southern plains, upper 90s in the northern plains, and 90s in the Intermountain West, desert Southwest, looking at 100 degrees. Not too bad. Oh, look at that. Big blank areas on the map. That's really helpful. I don't know why that does that, folks. Sorry, this is live TV. Watch this, though. If I go all the way through this and cycle back, watch what happens. Look, you're getting a quick preview of it right here. Hey, there we go. Saturday, 100 in Raleigh. Woo, 101 down here in Greenville, Fayetteville, wherever that is. And Charlotte, 100, back into the hundreds, upper 90s, hundreds again in the northern plains, all the way down to the Central Plains, desert Southwest, cooling off a little bit with a little bit of a trough coming into the Pacific Northwest. Not too bad up in New England as well. And then Sunday, finally, there we go. Same story, same image, same picture, a little bit warmer up here in New England and warming back up in the plains. But as we get on out in time, folks, got some changes on the horizon. We're going to look at those here in the long-range forecast in a second. But as you go through Saturday morning, could start off a little wet here around Iowa, northern portions of the Ohio Valley, southern Great Lakes, and little systems kind of working through there. We'll see scattered thunderstorms in the afternoon pop up here across the south and east. Up here in the northern plains too, a couple of little areas of concern for severe weather. And as we get on into the evening hours, we're still going to see some rain moving into the New England and northeastern areas, eastern Great Lakes. Going to see Sunday kind of be a washout in some of those areas up there, and then we'll see scattered showers and thunderstorms everywhere else, with severe weather being a concern back up here in North Dakota and Minnesota as we get on into Sunday evening. Look at the Europeans showing a big bow echo coming through. We'll watch that and see what happens as we get on out in time. But that's your weekend forecast. We're going to look at the long range and see when that cool down or that heat eater is coming. The heat eater is coming. I wasn't actually sure whether I should title this episode Heat Eater or Heat Beater. The heat is beaten down on us, and we've beaten the topic like a dead horse. But we're going to beat the heat, so there's your case for the heat beater, but the heat eater sounds better because it's going to eat the heat, and that's just a big trough that's coming in as the ridge migrates back to the west. We're out here on Monday, and some people say they don't understand this. I want to explain this, and I hope I can make this make some sense to you. The ridge, when you have a ridging, we're looking at 500 millibars, which is really where a lot of the action takes place in the atmosphere. It happens up here, drives kind of what happens down here at the surface. So a lot of times we show these mid-level maps because of that. And this map here at 500 millibars gives you a good idea of where ridges and troughs are. Ridges are usually fair weather, hot weather in the summertime, keep you stable, and troughs is where it kind of cools off and you start to see unsettled weather, particularly along and ahead of troughs. And so when you see these big orange colors, that usually means ridging, and that ridging is just, if you've ever seen anybody stand on the ground and hold four corners of a flag, a big flag, and kind of do like that, you see these waves and troughs. If we were looking at a three-dimensional shape of the atmosphere and we were only looking at the one variable of the 500 millibar heights, that's what it would look like, ridges and troughs. Ridges, heat rises, and so you get ridging, and cold air is dense and it sinks and you get troughing. That's how you know, ridges, hot, troughing, cool. That's what's going on here. And the circles is where the ridge center is. And this isn't really a circle that you're seeing here, but it kind of represents it. It'll turn into a circle as we go out in time. Watch what happens as we go on out toward mid next week. We've got a ridge centered across the U.S. That is a big heat signal for the U.S. and the eastern portion of the country as well. We get on out here toward the end of the week. look what happens. That ridge starts to really poke up big into Canada. Got some big bright colors up there, and things are starting to diminish in terms of the intensity of the colors across the United States as that ridge pulls back into the Four Corners region. And look here, this big blue blob coming into the northeast, bringing some cool dry air up there. That's a trough, and see the dip down here is a trough. The ridge kind of goes up like that. All right, so we'll go on out here way out in time, and that ridge starts to get centered out of the Four Corners region, and you got whites over the eastern half of the country. That means it's likely to cool down a bit, particularly the northern portion of this, and get a little bit more stormy in terms of more precipitation potentials, especially if the axis of this trough here along and to the east of that, as this kind of oscillates back and forth, that'll dictate daily precipitation chances as well. So, and by the way, troughs act as a shield for tropical development. So anything develops out here is just going to get kicked out anyway, as long as this trough is here. But anyway, that's what's going on. That's the pattern. Looking at the actual temperature pattern as we go on out in time, these are 5-day averages of 850 millibars. That's about a mile off the ground. It gives you a good indication of where temperatures are going to be above and below normal at the surface. Red's above, blue's below. And as we go on out in toward next week, we're starting to see these reds diminish greatly and blues getting in here as we get on into the 5-day average of July the 29th through August the 3rd. That's your 5-day average, and this just gets better and better over time. Eventually it'll kind of mute out as the ensemble mean mutes out, kind of smooths things out over time. But that's what we're looking at as we get on into August, folks. We could start to see a legitimate cool down over the northern sections of the country, spilling into the eastern and central sections of the country too. West heats up under the core of that ridge, but that's what we've got going on there, and that's what we're looking forward to. The Climate Prediction Center for August 1 through 7, big signal for below in the eastern and northern portion of the country, and above along the south. Florida, you're above. Up here in the northwest, Alaska really above, and Hawaii's above as well. Precipitation going to be below up here where it's drier, and that trough axis is way up here. We're seeing storms kind of move underneath that trough axis, and there it is above normal in the south and southeast, and above up here where we could get some little troughing sneaking in from time to time, but below and to near normal in Alaska and near normal in Hawaii. And that's that, folks. That's the long range. Got some hope, light at the end of the tunnel. Let's wrap up things with the geological and space weather update. Alrighty, tick tock. We're waiting for that minor coronal hole stream to arrive and potentially put us back into minor geomagnetic storm conditions. But right now, nothing going on the KP index. Got a little steam being blown off here by a CME ejection on the right of the disk, but nothing going on really except for the moon rotating around, which I think is kind of cool. Sun, no coronal holes except for maybe a minor one turning in toward us. But here is the coronal hole stream. You can kind of see this as we go on out. This thing is moving on out in time. Look at this little plasma density spike followed by a coronal hole stream going to hit. It's very small potential for a little bit of aurora viewing, maybe making it into the northern portion of the United States. That's what I'm trying to say. That's our country, the United States. If we can get this thing to clear out up here along the north and get rid of some of that smoke, you might see aurora over the next 24 to 48 hours. Just pay attention to it. Nothing going on the earthquake front. A few minor shakes out here in the west. Nothing going on up here in the mountains of Alaska as well. Had a big shake down in the South Pacific, but it's way deep. I doubt too many people felt that. And here is the moon phase, 0.9% waxing crescent going up to full moon on August 9th. Remember to get out there and catch those Perseids while the new moon is around and you don't have a lot of light pollution. And by the way, daylight is chopping off, folks. Look at this. Sunrise and sunset. Look at this. We are here losing daylight on the front end and the back end. That's what this looks like, and it'll go down all the way into December, and then it will start to turn around again, and we're counting down to fall. 59 days, under 60 days now. And that's it, folks, for the show, and that brings us into the answer to today's Weather IQ question, which is this: which of the following is a common weather hazard during the fall in many parts of the U.S.? And the answer is fog. Fog is a problem. Start to get cooler nights, a lot of moisture around. You know, we see more rain picking up in the fall, and plus we have maybe some soil moisture left over from summer, and it begins to cool rapidly near the ground. It creates the cloud we call fog, and you see that a little bit more prevalently in the fall. That's why that happens. Normally I try to give you this day in history fun fact to kind of leave with, but the only one I found that I thought was of any interest at all is that the Concorde crashed in 2000. Remember the Concorde? That was a supersonic jet from France, I believe, and it crashed, killed all the people on board, and that ended supersonic commercial air travel. So I didn't really want to talk about that, and actually I just did. So there we go. But the fun fact that I pulled out today was weather related, and clouds can weigh, I don't know if you know this or not, but clouds can weigh up to 1,000,000 pounds. They're made up of tiny droplets. They float across the sky, and of course all of that stuff, but they look light as a feather, but they're heavy as a whale, folks. They are up to 1,000,000 pounds with all that water vapor contained in them. And now you know about clouds, now you know about the moon, now you know the weather, and you've experienced the Friday fun-filled edition of Cold Rain's Weather World. I'll be back Monday with a full edition, but I'll have a video tomorrow and Sunday as well, but we'll do a little bit of a shorter video to keep you posted on what's going on. But anyway, I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Thanks again for watching, and I'll be praying for you guys this weekend. Hope you pray for me as well, and my grandmother too. So take care and have a happy Friday.